with JMU Hall of Famer and someone who knows a hell of a lot about taking it to the house.
Joyce breaks a tackle and goes in for a touchdown. Another spectacular run by Delvin Joyce.
Delvin Joyce brings his unique perspective to the podcast to break down all things he's seeing about JMU football, with a little help from EPA King Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
Here he goes. He's going to try to beat the punter. He does. He's gone. And that is a touchdown.
Welcome into To the House.
Look at him turn back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Now, here's Delvin Joyce with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
All right, welcome to another episode of To the House. I am your host, Delvin Joyce. Some people call me the People's Choice. I am joined once again by my guy, Jack Fitzpatrick, a.k.a. Jay Feezy, a.k.a. the EPA King. How's it going, Jack?
It's going great. It's been a fantastic Monday. Hope your Monday's been just as fantastic.
Monday's amazing. I love Monday because if you own Monday, you own the week. Right? So you can't have the rest of the week without Monday.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, we had Bennett on last week. Jack, I got to say, I missed you. Bennett and I cooked a little bit last week, though. So the expectation is that you and I are going to cook tonight. Is that cool?
Yeah, and you got some people riled up last week, so I'm excited to see what we cook up this week.
I love getting people riled up. I also love that, I'm about to be 46 here pretty soon, and I have no idea how to get on message boards and Twitters and tweets and all that kind of stuff, so I miss all that. So you'll have to keep me posted on, what the talk is, what the scuttlebutt is.
I got you. The scuttlebutt. I can do that.
So Jack, we got football this week. I cannot wait. I don't know about you, but I had a hard time going into the weekend knowing that there was no JMU football game. Was that tough for you?
Yeah, man. I actually checked out almost entirely of football on Saturday. I was doing a bunch of other things, and with no JMU football on, I was like, I'm going to use this as my bye week too and just not really check in on anything.
Wow. So I got to say, I watched a lot of football. There was a point on Saturday where I had 3 TVs going in the family room. I was watching 3 different games. I was watching Chapel Hill and Central. I was watching UNC Charlotte play Gardner Webb.
What a game. I did watch that game. I will say I did watch that game.
And you know what? I mean, God bless Gardner Webb. I mean, they should have won that game. I cannot believe they let Charlotte back in it. I also can't believe that they went for 2 in that situation, at the end of the game. Just tie the game up and go into overtime.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. Check out the JMU Sports News Podcast with Bennett and Jack. New episodes drop in the middle of every single week, previewing the upcoming week and recapping the previous week. It's all part of the JMU Sports News Network, your home for To the House and the JMU Sports News Podcast.
The analytics say to go for 2 there.
Oh, here we go. Go for 2 there. I think I agree. And for what it's worth, when we got that goal line stance against Gardner Webb, I said, I looked at my wife and I was like, if they score here, they're going for 2.
Yeah.
So thank God we left him out of we kept him out of the end zone. But what a great week for college football, but also what a great week for the Dukes, because this was our bye week. And, having a bye week this early in the season sort of seems like an odd place for a bye week. I don't necessarily know that the coaches love having a bye week this early, But in my opinion, this bye week comes at a perfect time for this team, especially after 2 lackluster performances. And for me, I think it's a chance for the team to take a step back and see exactly who and what they are. I have a saying in my business that when you're inside the bottle, it's kind of hard to see the label. And I think the Dukes right now are sort of inside the bottle. And I think this bye week was a fantastic opportunity for them to get outside the bottle, look at the label, and try to really figure out who they are and what they're all about. Now, I think this bye week could turn out to be a turning point for the season. I'm reminded of the UVA game last year. And while that wasn't a bye week, I feel like the rain sort of, thunderstorm, go back in the locker room for 45 minutes was an opportunity for the team to hit the reset button. And when they came out of that locker room and won that game, which, by the way, looked like a JMU home game by the end of it, I felt like they played inspired football for the rest of the season. So I am excited that we had this bye week early in the season. I think it is exactly what the team needed. And now it's an opportunity for us to play inspired football moving forward. So, Jack, what are your thoughts? Are you excited about what the team can do coming out of this bye week?
I'm pumped because they showed the flashes. The second half of Charlotte was magnificent. The final 50 seconds of the first half of that Charlotte game was magnificent. And even the second half of the Gardner-Webb game, they scored on every single one of their possessions. They clearly know the adjustments that have to be made. They know the knobs to turn, the dials to push, the buttons to push, because they've done it in the second half of both of these games. Now with the bye week, I'm cautiously optimistic that they did all the right things. They did essentially what they've been doing at halftime into this game during the bye week to try and figure it out so that they can start quick. And as cliche as it may sound, as I don't think there's ever been a bye week that doesn't come at a perfect time, according to a coach in a press conference. But it does feel like you said, this bye week comes at a good time because I haven't seen vibes around JMU football this bad in ever. I don't think ever. So it's also a good bye week for the fans as well.
Well, I love that you brought that up because this team is experiencing some adversity. And the great thing about adversity is that's when the leaders on the team will actually emerge. And some of those leaders are going to be chosen by the players. Now, the coaches going into the season, they say, hey, based on practice, based on what I know about this player, this guy's going to be a leader on this team. But you don't really know what that person is about until the lights are on and it's live and you're in a game. And what happens when there's adversity is some of those players who may reluctantly be leaders on the team, those players will step forward and actually become leaders. I'm actually reminded of, one of my first experiences as a leader on a JMU football team. I had no idea that anybody saw me in a leadership role. And we were down in a game. I think it was Delaware. I can't remember. We were at home, and one of my good friends, he's a good friend to this day. I'm going to shout him out on the podcast. Shout out to Mike Cox. But Mike comes over to me on the sideline and literally looks at me and says, dude, you're probably going to have to run one back. He says that like it's that easy. Like I could just press a button.
Yeah, man, just do it.
Yeah, just run one back. And it wasn't, honestly, I've never told this story. It wasn't until then that I truly saw myself as a leader on the team. And from that day forward, I knew that people were counting on me and that it mattered. And there are some players in that locker room right now who are getting that wake-up call because the team is experiencing that adversity. So, now the other thing with this bye week, I think, is it's a great opportunity for us to get some guys healthy. You're never 100%. I mean, the only time you're 100% might be when you're actually coming into training camp. But after that, you're never 100% again. And so it's an opportunity to get some guys healthy. So, I mean, I know that there are some guys that we are looking forward to kind of coming back into the fold this week. Taji Hudson on the offensive line or at the receiver core, and our guy on the offensive line. Help me out, Jack.
Tyshawn Wyatt, Henrico native, right? Yes. Right here from Richmond, Virginia, baby.
Tyshawn Wyatt. So what have we heard? I know that there was a press conference today. have we heard anything about these two guys coming back into the fold?
Taji, he's still looking great in practice. He's been looking great in practice every week of practice so far, but he's yet to take a football snap this year. He's looking great. They won't know fully for Taji and Ayo Adei until Coach Chesney said Wednesday or Thursday they'll have a better feel on when they'll come back. They're pacing Ayo back. This is an injury, according to the post-game press conference against Gardner-Webb, that they knew about. He's played through injured before. It's kind of something they have to – it's not something you're ever going to heal. It's something you kind of have to deal with and learn how to play with. So he's working his way back. Tyshawn Wyatt, though, crickets. I don't know when or if he's coming back. Last time we heard, he wasn't even – it sounded like he wasn't even cleared for football activities yet.
Wow.
And I think he had a I'm not entirely sure, but it had something to do with his quad, a torn quad or something along those lines when he got injured against ODU last year.
Yeah, and a quad tear is a tough one. Like a hamstring is hard, but that quad muscle is really a tough one, especially for an offensive lineman. Hopefully he can get back and give us some more continuity on the offensive line. Speaking of that, we talked a lot last week about how the team was rotating players in and out. Hopefully during this bye week, there was a lot of good on good. Now they're actually installing for Chapel Hill, and hopefully that install involves, hey, here are our best 11 on offense. Here's our best 11 on defense, and let's cook, right? So I'm really looking forward to see what comes out of this bye week in terms of player rotations.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm pulling up some PFF grades. Some of them have played really well. Jesse Ramil has played very well in place of Tyshawn Wyatt, but man, how good would it be to have Tyshawn Wyatt back? That's what I just keep thinking back on. Like, how different would this team look if you have a all-conference caliber player back?
And listen, I know you guys have talked about PFF on the JMU Sports News podcast, but for the To The House listeners who may not necessarily be super analytical, why don't you break down PFF for our listeners?
PFF is just another nerdy thing that Bennett and I love, where it's really a person, a PFF evaluator watching the games at his house and might have the all 22, might have a little bit extra information than what we have watching the ESPN Plus broadcast, but you grade each player on each play and you grade them between -2 and 2. And so a 4-point swing, and you grade in half-point increments. So say you have the perfect play. So you're Jesse Ramil on the left side. You got a rusher. You block him perfectly. You open up a lane, and it springs for a 10-yard run. That's going to be a 2-point plus for you. So you at the end of the game, you got these numbers. You got these grades. So Jesse Ramil this season has a 78.8 pass blocking grade, which is one of the tops on the team. So it's just really a guy grading it. They have someone check the work. They have their own like proprietary system on how to grade these players. But that's essentially what PFF means. Or PFF is.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, does PFF actually stand for anything, or is it
Pro Football Focus?
Love it.
It's owned and started by Chris Collinsworth.
Interesting.
It was a way for him in his broadcasting career, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of get more information to enhance his color commentary.
No kidding. I wonder what ChatGPT says about that. I wonder if Chat can give us a grade on our players. That would be amazing. Now, speaking of our players, again, I do believe it's a chance for our players to get healthy. Jack, one of the things that you and I were talking about is sort of that mentality for the players going into a bye week. And honestly, I think for these players, it really is an opportunity to chill and get away from JMU football for a second. I also think it's a chance for them to go home, because I don't know that they had practice on Friday and Saturday, right? Like
they were off.
Yeah, they were off
all day. They had morning practice on Thursday, then they were done. So they had all day rest of Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday off.
Yeah, and you know what's cool about that? Not only do they get to go home, get a home cooked meal from their parents, but now they get to go back to their high schools, and they get to go back to the places that made them. And for some of them, and this is, again, a cool thing, it is a reminder at your high school football game that you were once the man. And so now you sort of get that edge, you get that chip on your shoulder, and you get to come back and you get to feel that ego boost from being back home and everybody telling you how great you are. And so, again, I do think that, the bye week, especially early in the season, I think it's going to do well for our players. And we're going to need it, especially going into this Chapel Hill game. So Jack, before we dive into Chapel Hill, any final thoughts about the bye week?
I hope it worked. I hope the right levers were pulled and the buttons were pushed, and we'll see how they come out of it. I love that take, or that I never thought of that, going back to your home high school and you're being showered with praise. Your coaches are showing you around to the freshmen that just joined the team. And it's like, this is what if you guys work hard and put your nose to the grindstone, this is what you can become. Go play D1 football. I do hope there was maybe some of their friends back at their high schools. Like, come on, man. How'd you only beat Gardner-Webb by that many points? What are you doing? You're supposed to be better than that. So they get their ego high. They get a little check in there too, and they want to come back and then prove their high school friends wrong.
Leave it to Jay Feasy to bring up Gardner-Webb one last time. I love it. All right. So now we're moving on to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And Jack, and all of JMU Nation, here's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. As we go into this week, I want you to take the NC off of their helmet. I want you to take the Jumpman and the ACC logo off their jersey. I want you to take the Argyle design off the sideline. And by the way, that's pretty dope. The Argyle on the sideline. I mean, that I love that. It's pretty cool. But take it off. This is an average football team with an exceptional running game. Now, if we were to look at how UNC has performed so far, they've had 3 games, we've had 2, but in their first game, they barely beat Minnesota 19-17, only because Minnesota missed a last-second field goal to win the game. They beat Charlotte, again, a common opponent with us, 38-20, and that game was actually close in the third quarter until Max Brown, Charlotte's starting quarterback, got hurt, a guy that we had to play against the entire game. Once he got hurt, all bets were off. Chapel Hill wins that game 38-20. And then here's the real kicker, and this is what I'm so excited about. They also struggled against an FCS opponent. They struggled against North Carolina Central, a team that they were expected to steamroll early in that game. Now, if you look at the final score, it was 45-10. But the game was actually 17-10, a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. And by the way, North Carolina Central's quarterback did not play the second half. So once he got hurt, they had zero opportunity to win that game because their backup quarterback only completed 1 pass for -1 yard. He was not a passing threat. So as we think about UNC Chapel Hill, and sort of what they look like from, the odds of the Dukes actually going out and winning that game. Again, I do believe that this is a very winnable game. So, Jack, I know you've had a chance to look at, their EPA numbers and their PFF grades and all these really cool technical things. What do your eyeballs tell you about this Chapel Hill team, though?
You're right. They're average. And from here on out, I'm not calling them UNC. They are Chapel Hill. They're part of the overall UNC institution. Don't got to say that is something I picked up working at Charlotte for 2 years. They everything is called Chapel Hill. They're not UNC because they're all part of the same institution, but that's besides the point. They're average. Outside of an NFL first-round running back in the backfield, Omarion Hampton, they haven't been able to pass the ball well, even before their starting quarterback, Max Johnson, got hurt in that Minnesota game. It was like pulling teeth to move that ball. JMU's defense, they've been a bend, don't break, but they still rank 17th in the nation in EPA allowed per rush. So they're still stopping the run at a fairly high clip. Granted, that is against Gardner-Webb and Charlotte, so take that. It's not Omarion Hampton by any stretch of the imagination. But like you said it, they're average. This is an opportunity for JMU, much like the UVA game last year, to pick up a statement win, a statement Power 4 win. On paper, it looks fantastic. Maybe it's a little less fantastic because the team isn't as great, but it doesn't matter when you're just looking at the ESPN ticker at the bottom. So this is such an opportunity for JMU to make us all forget about Gardner-Webb and to put a stamp down on this season.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, it's still UNC Chapel Hill, right? It's still a big Power 5 program.
Exactly.
And to your point, they did lose Max Johnson, and God bless that young man. I mean, he had a terrible injury in Minnesota. I think he literally just got back to North Carolina like this past week. Like, he's been in Minnesota since that game. So we wish him well. Hope he has a speedy recovery. But Connor Harrell, the sophomore, comes in to fill in for him. Now, Connor did not play a lot in that Minnesota game, right? I think he played like a quarter after Max got hurt, but he played a lot in the Charlotte game. And I do not think he looked great in the Charlotte game. Let me take a step back, though. This Connor Harrell kid, I mean, he's probably the kid that you would want your daughter to marry. Like, he's such a good kid. He was the valedictorian of his high school class. A lot of people don't even know that. He leads Bible study for the program. So just a really good overall kid, the kind of kid you root for. Now, of course, this past week, though, if you watch the North Carolina Central game, they brought in the third string quarterback, who is now, I guess, technically the backup, or maybe he's the guy competing for the starting job, a guy named Jacoby Criswell, who is a grad student, who also seems like a fantastic young man. I mean, I got to see him in their press conference, and he said all the right things, got a great personality, kind of looks like Jonathan Majors, the actor, but just a really good dude. I think he started his career at Chapel Hill, transferred to Arkansas, and then transferred back to UNC. Is that right?
Let me confirm. That's some Stetson Bennett type.
Yeah. Like he left Chapel Hill, went to Arkansas, and then came back. And so, what's interesting about having these two quarterbacks, Matt Brown, he said that they actually had a game plan going into the North Carolina Central game that they were actually going to let Connor Harrell play the first two series, and they were going to bring Criswell in no matter what for the third series. Now, I personally thought the way that Connor Harrell started that game, I thought they benched him and brought in Criswell. But apparently, everybody knew, all parties knew going into the game that Criswell was going to come into the game in the third series of the game. So I think what Mac Brown, what he says is that he's trying to get them both some playing experience going into ACC play. What I think he really means, though, is that I think he believed that they were just going to steamroll Central. I also think that he sees this JMU game as a winnable game because he's already said they're going to play both of them. I think he sees JMU as a winnable game, and it's an opportunity to have an open quarterback competition in live action and then pick a starter going into ACC play. What are your thoughts there? Do you think he's truly just trying to get some experience for both of them, or he's trying to figure out who the starter is?
I think he's trying to figure out who the starter is. And I think Mac Brown, no offense to him, he's kind of old school. So he wants those game reps, but he also probably still thinks mid-majors or group of five teams are like less than. And no offense again to Mac Brown, but I mean, the man's like, what, 79? He's very old.
I think 74, but yeah,
okay.
Somewhere around there.
Sorry, he's in his 70s. Still the coach. Yeah. I don't know if he's necessarily following along with like what JMU has been doing these past few years. Bob Chesney made a comment in his press conference today where he's like, I don't even think he knows my name. And Chesney was like one of the hottest coaching candidates on the market this last go around. It just seems very odd. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's like, okay, this is another win. We'll throw both of them out there and then we'll go forward after that.
Well, I mean, listen, when I look at Criswell and Harrell, I think they both looked shaky at times against an FCS opponent. But if I had to compare the two, I think Criswell seemed like the better decision maker. He looked more poised in the pocket. He looked like he was going to take care of the ball a lot better. And he threw the ball downfield much better than Harrell. Harrell obviously was the running threat, but I think Criswell was more of a traditional pocket passer, which if you look at the game plan they put in place for Max Johnson, their original starter, Criswell probably corresponds to what they wanted to do on offense, identity-wise, more so than Harrell. If you look at this past game, though, Harrell's first two drives versus North Carolina Central, again, an FCS opponent, he had 5 plays for 16 yards in the very first drive, and then they punted. And then he had 3 and out. And then Criswell comes in and leads the team on 3 straight scoring drives. So again, they've got a controversy brewing, whether they want it to be or not. And the fact that they're playing 2 quarterbacks, the old saying, if you have 2, you don't have 1, they definitely have a controversy there.
They have more of a controversy than JMU does. They have literally 2 quarterbacks playing in games. JMU's fan base is going through a controversy themselves, and only 1 quarterback has seen the field.
Yeah, totally. Now, again, when you look at North Carolina, though, I do think it all starts up front for them. They have a huge O-line. Now, I know they've had some injuries. I think their center was out this past game. One of their guards was out, I think. But Omarion Hampton is easily the best running back in the country. I mean, the guy is All-American last year, and a lot of people in Chapel Hill think he's actually a Heisman candidate. Now, I don't know what his odds are. It's tough for a running back to win the Heisman, but if you look at that guy, he looks like a stud running back. He's 6 feet tall. He's like 220 pounds, and he breaks 1 million tackles a game. I've never seen anything like it. Now, Charlotte, their D-line, if you go back and look at that Charlotte game, which I did this weekend, I watched it live, and then I watched it again this weekend. Charlotte's D-line actually got after them. And they actually knocked Omarion Hampton out of the game. Now, I don't know if they actually truly hurt him enough that he couldn't technically play, but he didn't go back in the game, and they actually held him under 100 yards. Now, his backup came in and actually rushed for 100 yards, which tells you the strength, I think, of this offensive line. So for us, we've got to be able to get some penetration. I know we're going to talk about some of the keys to the game, but what are your thoughts on Hampton as a Heisman candidate, but also having a repeat performance as an All-American this season?
All-American likely, Heisman unlikely. I just looked up his odds, plus 25,000. So a $100 bet would win you $25,000.
So you're saying there's a chance.
So I'm saying you can bet on him. However, you might be just better off lighting your $10 on fire. No, he's a very good running back. I'll dive into some numbers. 76.7 PFF grade, one of the tops in the nation, a top 30 running back according to PFF. He does everything fairly well. Pass blocking grade 66, which is very good for a running back. He's going to present headaches. And as good as JMU's rush defense has been these last few years, as good as it's been at times this season, JMU has not faced a running back like him. If he goes, the Tar Heels win this game. I think it's that simple.
No, he is exceptional. I mean, I know a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was on your on the Sports News podcast, I talked about Curtis Keaton and how if God made a running back, it would be Curtis Keaton. Like this Omarion Hampton guy reminds me of that mold. Like he's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he is absolutely going to be a headache for the Dukes. Now, the other side of the ball, though, as we think about Charlotte's on defense, right? Their D line, I think, is legit. But North Carolina Central, an FCS team out of the MEAC, not necessarily the FCS powerhouse conference, all right? Out of the MEAC, they were able to drive the ball in that opening drive. They held the ball for over 7 minutes, 16 plays, 75 yards, touchdown drive on the Tar Heels. Touchdown drive. Charlotte actually controlled the ball against them too. Like if you go back and look at that Charlotte game, Charlotte actually had some sustained drives. In fact, Charlotte was inside their 10 twice and only came away with 2 field goals. Like if you can put points on the board, not field goals, but actual touchdowns, then I truly believe that this defense has some holes. Now, I think what's going to play to our advantage, and again, we're going to break down the game in a second, but they don't seem to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback with their front 4. They do not seem to get a lot of penetration up front. Now, they do in spurts, but it does not seem to be a consistent thing from all the film that I've watched. So one of the things that I have seen is that they do bring pressure a lot. And when they bring pressure, that's when they're able to actually get to the quarterback or get to a running back in the backfield for a TFL. So any thoughts, I guess, on Chapel Hill's defense going into this game, especially in the trenches at the D-line slot?
Yeah, their pressure's worked, and they know how to dial it up at the right point. And they've done a pretty good job this season on early downs. They've really been able to kind of slow down offenses and force them into maybe third and mediums, third and longs, third and throws, essentially, where then you know exactly what's going to happen. So they've done a good job with those types of things. But I mean, NC Central with that type of drive to open up the game, even Charlotte was doing most of their damage with Purdy, who was a true freshman, and he was thrown in there and started slicing and dicing the secondary. The Tar Heels are susceptible to some long passes. So fingers crossed, Dollison doesn't have a case of the dropsies and he goes off for, 3 catches, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the type of game that I think this lines up well for Dollison. And the Tar Heels defense, though, very good, but also can get got.
I'm so glad you brought up the fact that Max Brown got hurt in the game against the Tar Heels. And then the freshman Purdy came in. Now, even though that freshman came into the game, I want you to go through with me what Charlotte was able to do against this Tar Heel secondary. The Tar Heels gave up some chunk plays.
Big chunk plays.
Like big chunk plays in the secondary. And that is something that is a strength of JMU, what we thought we were going to see from an identity standpoint, explosive chunk plays. But here are the plays that the Tar Heels gave up against Charlotte. 34-yard pass play, 42-yard pass play, 28-yard pass play, 25-yard pass play, 37, 23, 30 yards, and 40 yards. All but 50 of Charlotte's 309 passing yards came on those 6 plays. All but 30. So this team, they averaged 32.4 yards per pass against this team. So they are absolutely susceptible to the big chunk plays. And I do think as we transition now to keys to victory for JMU, as we go into this Chapel Hill game, I do believe that some of those chunk plays are going to be a big advantage for us. Now, go ahead, Jack.
No, and you got to the wide receivers, man. They got to create separation. They got to do what they got to do.
Yeah, so we're actually going to start on the defensive side of the ball because defense wins championships. And as I think about, what the keys to victory are for this defense, they have absolutely got to find a way to get off the field. And that means stopping Omarion Hampton, right? And I know that we love this bend, don't break mentality, right?
Love? No, I do not love it.
I know that. All right. How about this? I know that we have talked about and sort of heralded the ability of this defense to bend and not break. They've only given up 1 touchdown through 2 games, but that might not work against a team like Chapel Hill that has such a dominant running game. And, we talked a lot last week about JMU establishing their identity. Well, North Carolina has established their identity, and they are a running football team. In fact, Mac Brown said it in the presser this past week. He said, that's our identity. We run the football. So we have to stop Omarion Hampton. We have to tackle him. We have to wrap him up because this dude breaks tackles. So I need Hendrick and Dobbs, the law firm of Hendrick and Dobbs, to come up big and step up in the A gap and B gap and hit this guy in the mouth repeatedly and take him to the ground. So again, thoughts on our ability to stop this guy? Is it scheme or is it just going to be all out will from some of our leaders who will probably emerge from this past week?
I don't want to sound like a cliche, but it's about will. Like the scheme has been there. Like Lyle Hemphill has done a very good job as the defensive coordinator. You said it, only holding the opponents to 1 touchdown this year. I mean, has just coordinated his butt off. You got to tackle. You got to tackle Hampton. And that comes down to Taurus Jones, Trent Hendrick, Jacob Dobbs, Gannon Weathersby. It comes down to everyone who's going to be there as a linebacker, even some DJ Barksdale in there who's playing kind of that rover type of position. You got to tackle, man. If you let Omarion Hampton break a tackle, it's over. It's over.
Well, the dude led the FBS last year in yards after contact. I didn't even know that was a stat that they tracked. And so I heard Chesney say that in his press conference, I think today. And so I went back and I was like, well, how many yards after contact did he actually have? He had 1,164 yards after contact. That's actually a good season for most running backs. Right? He had that after contact. And when I'm watching him play, he kind of looked like Bo Jackson on Tecmo Bowl. And Jack, I know you're a youngster. You have no idea what Tecmo Bowl is, but for my Gen Xers out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say Tecmo Bowl. Jack, did you play Tecmo Bowl? Have you ever seen it?
I've seen it in play. That's where they like run in straight lines and Bo Jackson was the cheat code.
Yeah, and you just run up and you run down, and you run up and you run down. And if you run into somebody with Bo Jackson, you pluck them off of you. So we called it plucking, is what we called it in Martinsville, where I'm from. Bo Jackson was the master of it. By the way, Jack, I need you to go back and play Tecmo Bowl and double dribble, right? If you don't play anything else
double
ever,
dribble?
Yeah, double dribble. Come on. No, actually it's pronounced bubble bibble, but you have to play double dribble. But going back to Hampton for a second, if we can stop Hampton, then here's what we're going to do on defense. We're going to force one of these quarterbacks to beat us. And I do not believe, as great a kid as Connor Harrell is, I love this guy. I love everything about him. I don't believe he can beat us. And Criswell, I mean, the guy is a fifth-year senior. I think he's a grad student. Hasn't played a lot of football. Neither of these quarterbacks has played a lot of football. I do not believe that either of them can truly march down the field and beat us. It is the combination of Omarion Hampton and one of these quarterbacks making a throw here and there that could actually beat us. So we got to find a way to get off the field and force some turnovers with these two quarterbacks who have not played a lot of football.
I'm going to throw a question at you about this.
Talk to me.
Because Hemphill, he preaches turnovers. That is his thing. And it's come up big time early on in this season. Fumbles, interceptions, all of it. And that is kind of a difference from Kurt Signetti and the Bryant Haynes defense, which was, we're going to get you off the field in 5 plays or less, and then we're going to get the ball back. With this game, would you rather finish maybe with 2 interceptions and Omarion Hampton runs for 125 yards? Or would you rather no turnovers, but you hold Hampton to maybe 50 to 60 yards rushing, and you're able to kind of get those 3 and out, 6 and out type of things?
Yeah, I don't think that we stand a snowball's chance in hell of stopping Hampton from going over 100 yards. I'm going to be honest. We are going to have to force some turnovers. Hampton is going to get his, but the question is, how does he get his? Are they going to be big 25, 30-yard runs, or is he going to have to carry the ball 35 times this game and get 3 yards a carry? Because if you look at his load, I mean, this guy, he is an old school running back that runs the ball 30 times a game. They do not do running back by committee. And so he is a absolute workhorse running back. And as long as we can keep him, under that 150, 200 yards, if he goes off for 200, we're cooked. But if we can keep him under maybe 150, 125 yards, but force these quarterbacks into some mistakes, I think that is the recipe. And when you look at, when you look at Connor Harrell, he doesn't take care of the ball that well. He's had some flashes. He's had some really good runs. He's had some really good throws here and there, but he'll throw it up for us for grabs every now and then. And he'll get a little loose in that little option that they run, which I'm praying that they run that option, because every time he's pitched it, it's been 50-50 whether or not it's going to work out in their favor. So I'm praying that they run that option game with him. So very, very interested to see how the defense comes out and responds. What about you? I mean, what would you prefer? Would you prefer like the turnover game, or would you say let's shut Hampton down to 50 yards, which I think is impossible?
If it was possible, I think I would prefer the shutting him down to 50 yards, because I think if you do that, you win the game. I think if you can force 3 and outs at a consistent basis, or at least hold their success rate pretty low where they're not getting explosives and they're not being able to string together 4-yard run, 5-yard run, 3-yard run, and you can hold them to those 3-and-out, 6-and-out types of things and hold them into 3rd-and-pass situations. I like that, but as you were saying, it's like, yeah, Hampton's going to get his. It's not a question of if, it's when is he going to pop one? When are things going to go his way? And if we're playing a game where Hampton's running for triple digits, you got to force at least one turnover. You got to pick whoever that quarterback is off at least once. You got to hope that Hampton gets the case of some butterfingers at some point and they can peanut punch the ball away and force something that way.
No, Hampton's ball security, man. I mean, this dude, I'm telling you.
He's an NFL running back.
He's an NFL running back. He takes care of the ball. I don't think I have never seen him fumble. He's a great pass blocker. He's actually got pretty good hands coming out of the backfield, although they don't need to throw the ball to him. I mean, he is going to be a challenge for the Dukes, and I would actually be okay with some 3-4 yard runs. It's the 20-yard run. Like, if you watch these 3 games that they've played, he just breaks off 15, 20, 25. And when he gets a full head of steam, that dude is like impossible to bring down. Nobody solo tackles him. There's going to be 3-4 guys. We got to gang tackle him all day.
He's averaging 6.3 yards per carry, which is just an insane number for a guy being at his usage rate. I'm looking at what his career yards per carry is because it's gonna blow me away, isn't it? Oh yeah, oh my Lord, this dude, 253 carries a year ago, which is wow, a lot. 5.9 per attempt.
5.9. And what did Adeye have at North Texas? I think he was at like 6 though, right? Or like 4.5 or something.
He was over 7.
Yeah, it was some ridiculous number. But on like not half carries, right?
Not on 253 carries. He was on,
right.
I think he has a 7.2 yard per carry. I'm checking it now. Last season.
Yeah.
Come on, load a little faster. Here we go. That's not what I need.
And while that's loading, I mean, there are probably some of our listeners who are saying, man, they're really hyping up this Hampton guy. If you have not watched him play, if you don't know, you'll know very soon. So
he had 112 carries in 2022 and averaged 7.2 yards per carry. 143 yards last season, averaged 7.1 yards per carry. Yeah. Nothing to sneeze at. That is amazing numbers.
Yeah.
But on half the carries, essentially, Hampton is doing the exact same production that Adeye did.
No, Hampton is a dude. Adeye's a dude, but Hampton is a dude. I'm going to come back to that, by the way. So give me a second. I got one more point on defense. Well, I think one of the things that we have to be ready for on defense is maybe a circus play or two. Now, they didn't really show any of that against FCS North Carolina Central, nor do I think they needed to. But against Charlotte, if you remember, they actually ran a double reverse, maybe perhaps having seen us run a double reverse against Charlotte with some success. So they just copied our play. And then later in the game, they ran the exact same double reverse play, pitched it back to the quarterback, and the quarterback threw it downfield for a touchdown. So I do believe if they would run a circus play against a team like Charlotte, that they, by all intents and purposes, should have had no challenges with. I do believe with the Dukes coming to town, they're going to have something in that playbook that we are not necessarily prepared for, and we got to be on the lookout for that. Now, let's transition over to the offensive side of the ball. We may have some final thoughts about defense, but if we think about offense, Jack, what's the first thing I'm going to say? If you had to guess, what is the first key to our offensive performance against Chapel Hill?
Barnett finding a rhythm.
Barnett finding a rhythm and the offensive getting off to a fast start. I mean, the first 2 games of the season, we've actually looked, very, very lethargic and just out of sorts in the first half of both of those games. And I think if we can start out fast, and by start out fast, I mean, we can't get behind the chains on our drives, right? Which means that our run plays actually go for positive yards. I'd like to see those run plays. If we run the ball on first down, let's get 3 or 4 yards. And if we pass the ball, then we've got to execute. I love that we came out against Gardner-Webb and we threw a little short hitch that was supposed to help AB3 sort of get into that rhythm, pick up some positive yards, but we got to execute those plays and actually complete the pass. The other real key, I think, in that is that we also have to play ball control. I think we need to possess the ball and keep their offense off on the sideline, because once they go in the game, we know what they're going to do. What's their identity? They run the football. And when you have a team like Chapel Hill who runs the football, they can also possess the ball. And so for us to get some opportunities and put some points on the board, we've got to get them off the field. And when we do, our offense needs to possess the ball. So Jay Feasy, I'm going to toss it over to you. Any initial thoughts for you on those two things? And then anything for you that sort of stands out as a key on this offense?
Yeah, with that, like Barnett he's settled into games very nicely, but he comes out very excitable. It seems like the passes are a little high on him. They come out a little hot. His receivers also haven't necessarily helped him at times. A few key drops. Cam Ross did one against Charlotte. Logan Kyle had a pretty big drop against Gardner-Webb. Both of those plays would have been for first downs, maybe even a lot more. So Barnett, if he can just maybe take a page out of the JJ McCarthy playbook and sit underneath the goalpost and get some meditation in pregame or something to try and kind of even himself out. Because JMU, they will be a very, very good group of 5 team if Alonzo Barnett can start games the way he's finished them these last 2 weeks. And then also his wide receivers have to help him. I think the running game, we've seen flashes from it. If Pettaway's the go-to running back, I'm not concerned. I think Pettaway is a darn good running back, and I'm excited for his revenge game against the Tar Heels. I'm worried about, is there going to be a wide receiver, whether it's Taji Hudson if he comes back from injury? Is it Cam Ross? Is it Dollison? Is it Dylan Williams, who had a catch against Gardner-Webb late in that game for a first down? Is someone going to step up and be that go-to guy for Alonzo that he can count on, that's going to get the big plays, it's going to have the big catches? What Elijah Surratt was, what Chris Thornton had been, what Antoine Wells had been. Kind of JMU had been blessed with these great go-to receivers, not generation, but every 4 years or so, they'd get a new one. Who's going to be that? And he needs that. Alonzo Barnett needs that. I got to ask you a question, though, Delvin.
Yeah.
This is the first game Alonzo's played that has kicked before the sun has set. This is a noon kickoff on ACC Network. Bennett brought this up. Is it a real thing that on those night games, are you kind of sitting with your thoughts a little bit more and might get a little bit more nervous going out there? Like, how different is a night game compared to a noon kickoff?
I'll say for me personally, I hated night games because I wanted to get out. I wanted to go play my game. And then I wanted to go back and relax and watch football for the rest of the day myself, personally, enjoy my family, have dinner. But when you have a night game, you literally have to sit there and agonize all day long. So I heard you guys have this dialogue last week. I couldn't agree more. I do think that a noon kickoff, especially for AB3, where he's in his home state, he's going to have a lot of family there again, probably like he had at Charlotte. And the fact that he gets to wake up, eat his pregame meal, and hit the field, I think is going to play to his advantage. So I love that dialogue. Now, the other thing that I think is going to play to AB3's advantage, though, is his ability to get some pre-snap reads. So hopefully they are watching a lot of film, and he's looking at all the different sets that the Tar Heels have. Because I said this earlier, they don't hide their blitz packages very well. It was very rare that they brought a guy up to the line who showed blitz, who actually ended up dropping back in coverage. If they showed blitz, they were coming. And if AB3 can not only read his hot routes, but also properly identify the mic backer, right? Because that's where the protection goes to whoever the mic backer is. Identify the mic backer. We are going to get some chunk plays in this game because I do not believe their secondary is good enough. If we can get the protection up front, identify the mic backer, get some pre-snap reads, we're going to hit some big plays. AB3 will cook. Now, the other thing that I think helped North Carolina Central, if you watch the first half of that game, not the second half, because unfortunately their backup couldn't throw the ball. but their starting quarterback, Harris, who they have said is the best quarterback in HBCU football, they were able to move the pocket a bit. And so they rolled that kid out, and there were people wide open all over the field when they moved the pocket. And so I do think that AB3 has the ability to roll out, move the pocket, and find some openings and give himself sort of a run pass option, which I think is going to bode very well for the Dukes. If you look at when Max Brown for Charlotte, when he got hurt and his backup Purdy, the true freshman, came in, they were very effective running the ball with him, not only with design runs, but with some scramble plays. So AB3 absolutely needs to capitalize and keep them off balance with his feet.
I would love for Dean Kennedy to just talk with Alonzo this week. Use your legs. Use them.
Yeah.
If your first read isn't there, don't be afraid to just run. Like, you are the best runner on the field at times. Use your legs, because that was what he didn't do against Gardner-Webb in that first half. He really wanted to throw the football. Alonzo, I respect you. Tip of the cap. Go do it. You're the quarterback. That is your job, quite literally. But run the football.
Yeah.
You're so good at it, man.
And here's what that's also going to do. Now Chapel Hill has to put a spy on Alonzo, which means there's one less guy in coverage. And so, again, if you can run the ball effectively in the first half, not only with our running backs, but if AB3 can take off every now and then and get some big chunk plays like Purdy did, and also like North Carolina Central did when they ran their Wildcat formation. Like, if you go back and watch that game, Harris, again, their starting quarterback, with all due respect, he's a white guy at HBCU. He's a white dude. And then they bring in their backup quarterback to run Wildcat. This was in the first half, a black dude. So it wasn't like they were not telegraphing the fact that they were about to bring this guy in and he wasn't going to throw the ball. It was a Wildcat. With AB3, we actually have the advantage of, our starting quarterback who's going to throw the ball downfield can also run these design runs as a Wildcat. And it's going to be super effective because North Carolina Central did it very effectively with two very different players. So excited to see that. The other thing that I really think is a key to victory for us is if we can play disciplined football, right? Because Chapel Hill, if you look at their game last week, they were very undisciplined. They had 10 penalties in the first half, 16 total against North Carolina Central. And some of those penalties were penalties that actually kept some of the, North Carolina Central drives alive. And so I need JMU to play very disciplined football, recognizing that is a point of emphasis this week in practice for Chapel Hill. And when non-penalties are a point of emphasis, guess what happens to the players? Now they're thinking again. Now they're not reacting so much. They're actually thinking in their heads, trying to avoid penalties. And when you're doing that, you're not playing to your optimal level of performance. And so I do believe that that's going to be an advantage for the Dukes. Any thoughts on that, Jay Feasy, before I go to my last 2 points on the offensive side of the ball?
71.3 is what UNC has been averaging this season in penalties. Not good. 66 yards per game in penalties a season ago. I do just have to say a pet peeve of mine that you brought up earlier on the defense of UNC never disguising their blitz. And when they show blitz, they're going blitz. Can defensive coordinators please just disguise blitzes a little bit better? I was watching, I think it was one of the games I was watching, I think it was NFL, where they'd bring two linebackers into the A gap. And every single time they did, they blitzed. And if me, a professional talker, can figure out when you're blitzing the football, stop. Yeah. Disguise it. Just be better. Like, that's just a pet peeve of mine. Like, if you're showing blitz, don't blitz every time. Don't make it that easy.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting, Jack? And by the way, I'm not like the most brilliant football mind there is. Like, I know a little, I know enough to be dangerous. But sometimes I want to show you, I want to telegraph the blitz because I want to trick you into believing that we're running a specific coverage on the back end because that blitz usually corresponds with a certain coverage. And so there is a game within the game where the defensive coordinator is going to say, hey, you step up in the A gap. I want to show that blitz because he's going to think we're dropping back into cover 3 and maybe a cover 1 or whatever. And now the quarterback is going to get the wrong read and actually throw the ball into an interception. So, there is a game within the game, but for the most part, yes, North Carolina, from my viewpoint, this past week, they just telegraphed their blitzes. And maybe it was also a function of the fact that, Central had their second string quarterback in the game for the entire second half, and it really didn't matter.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But it's just, I was watching it this week and I was like, oh my, every time we're bringing 2 linebackers in the A gap, I know exactly what's going to happen. You go to the hot read, you get it out of your hands quickly. If I can figure this out, I know the quarterback who is a lot better than me can also figure that out. But that's a good point.
Yeah, totally. Now I got 2 more keys to victory on the offensive side of the ball. And, one of them is our running back room needs to have a game. Hopefully, our running backs are very competitive. Hopefully they listen to this pod and hear us talking about how great Omarion Hampton is. But our running backs, our studs, have to go out and ball. I'm talking about Adeye, if he's healthy and can go. Obviously, George Pettaway, because to your point, I wouldn't say this is a revenge game for him, but this is somewhat a game for him to come back and play with a chip on his shoulder. And then also Purdy. And so when I think about, when you get an opportunity to go against an All-American running back, you want to go out and show that you are better than that person. Like you have the chip on your shoulder. And I'm reminded of when I used to play, my arch nemesis was a guy named Brian Westbrook. And he was at Villanova when I was with JMU. Brian Westbrook, right?
Pretty good running back.
Yeah, really good running back. In fact, he came to Bridgeforth and broke my stadium all-purpose yards record one year. And ever since then, I'm like, if I'm playing against Brian Westbrook, I know we're on opposite sides of the ball. I can't tackle him, but I am going to try to go out and have a game to prove that I am the preeminent running back in the Colonial Athletic Association. And I hope that our running backs are just as competitive. They get to go out in front of a bunch of NFL scouts who are there to see Omarion Hampton. They are not there to see you. And it's your opportunity to show those people that you are a dog and that you can actually play at the next level. So I am hoping that our running backs come out and play with that chip on their shoulders. Now, the last one for me, I just got to say, this is a shout out to JMU Nation. So our crowd absolutely has to show up at this game and show out. And what a better way to sort of redeem ourselves. I'm not going to go back to 2 weeks ago, but let's redeem ourselves and show up for these players and show them that we support them and show up at this game and just go crazy. Because as I watch film on North Carolina, the one thing that has stood out to me is that their stadium is not even packed. It's largely empty, especially in the second half, right? Where the games that they have played at home have still sort of been in doubt, but the fans have checked out early. And if JMU Nation can show up and show out like I know we can make it a JMU home game in that fourth quarter. All right. So there's still some tickets left. Let's buy up all these tickets and let's turn that stadium purple. So, Jack, Jay Feasy, are you going to be there?
I will not be at the Chapel Hill game.
Come on, man.
Unfortunately, I do not have the funds in my bank account to make that trip worthwhile.
Hey, man, I got you, man. We'll start a GoFundMe for you. What game you want to go to?
Go buy me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/JMU Sports News and pay for the tickets.
There we go. I love it. All right. So, Jay Feasy, any final thoughts on the Chapel Hill game? Keys to victory for the Dukes? Anything left that I missed out?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head repeatedly. I mean, hopefully George Pettaway is you in this equation and Brian Westbrook is Hampton, but he's nowhere near as good as Brian Westbrook is or was. But it's going to be it's a huge game for a multitude of reasons. If the Dukes want to keep their college football playoff hopes alive, it's a must win. There's just so many layers to this game where you got to go out. You got to be competitive. You don't got to win. That'd be very nice. But you have to show that you can go toe-to-toe with an average ACC team.
Got to show it. And listen, I'm not at a place where this is like a put up or shut up kind of game for Coach Bob Chesney, but it is an opportunity for him to go out and win over this fan base, because this could be a signature win. And if you look at all of the prior coaches that have come into this program, they've typically gotten that signature win in that first year of the season. And this could be it for Coach Bob Chesney. And I'm telling you, you go out and you win this game, you got these fans forever. So let's go out. Let's get a win. Very winnable game. I do not want to disparage Chapel Hill. Very capable team. I think they're going to do just fine in the ACC, but they are not unbeatable. They are an average team that JMU should be able to go out and play very well against. All right, Jack, you know what time it is. It is time for What You Talking About, Willis?
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
All right. So this week's What You Talking About, Willis, comes from Chris Graham of the Augusta Free Press. Now, this one really got me, Jack. I mean, this one, I was almost gonna really, really get upset about this, and then I calmed down after I saw it. But here's what Mr. Graham said from the Augusta Free Press, which I think is in Waynesboro, Virginia. Basically covers UVA, right? Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I think he's what JMU Sports News is to JMU Sports. I think he is to that area of Virginia as a website blog thing.
Interesting. Okay. Well, here's what he said this past week. He said, here's the title of one of his articles. It said, "Reality Check. JMU loses a ton of money trying to pretend to be big boy football." Now, first off, I mean, again, don't take this personal. That headline is trash, not just because of the content, but because you could have just said pretending to be big boy football, not trying to pretend to be big boy football, unless he was really trying to diss us, saying that, man, you guys are just trying to even pretend to be big boy football. Now, where I really took issue with this is that he says he was goaded into this by a random JMU football fan in the comments section of a YouTube. Now, listen, I know Chris is a UVA grad, right? So I would guess that this has probably been on his mind for a long time. And I'm going to tell you when it started being on his mind. But I got to say, Chris, what you talking about, Willis? First off, of course, JMU loses money on its football program, but so does every other non-Power 5 football program, from G5 to FCS to Division III. So football programs losing money is not a new thing. The thing that you have to realize about JMU football's meteoric success over the last 10 years and the success that the basketball program has had over the last year, what that means is that the school becomes that much more popular. In fact, I think JMU had a record number of applications. I'm in North Carolina. I've been in North Carolina for 20 years. 20 years ago, when I moved to North Carolina in 2005, hardly anybody knew JMU. Now, when I wear a JMU hat around town, or when I wear a JMU shirt in a gym, they don't confuse us with George Mason anymore and say, "Oh, you guys have a great basketball team," right? They actually know who we are. And so the fact that JMU's football program loses money is not necessarily a big deal. But here's the thing. He cherry-picked 2022, which during that transition to FBS was probably our least profitable year as a new member of the Sun Belt Conference. We couldn't even participate in the full revenue of the Sun Belt media deal and all the other revenue streams. And so while, of course, we do lose money, we are not as unprofitable as Mr. Graham tried to make us seem in his article. But I had all these stats that I was going to pull out and all these things that I was going to use for this segment. But you know what? I forgot. We actually have the ultimate scoreboard against Chris and UVA. Because, again, he's a UVA grad. So while he says that he was goaded into this by some random schmo on YouTube, he probably has had this on his mind ever since JMU walked into Scott Stadium last year and beat him, or ever since the Cavs came into the AUBC and lost to JMU in basketball in 2022, right? So, for me, if I'm thinking about pretending to be a big boy football team, if we're a pretend team, then what does that make UVA? And by the way, I love my UVA fans out there. So, don't take this personal. Shout out to the GOAT, Michael Jordan. But the one thing that UVA people have always kind of held near and dear, like sort of that consolation, is that they got the academics, right? We're always going to have the academics. But now Virginia Tech is ranked ahead of Virginia in terms of top public universities. So what you talking about, Willis? Man, get out of here with that. I don't want to hear that crap anymore. What are your thoughts on that headline and that take from Chris Graham of the Augusta Free Press?
It's just so out of touch. It's just clickbait. It's just this guy trying to drum up something where it's just like, brother, you didn't even fact check yourself. Like, I'm pretty sure he is the writer, editor, publisher, every part of this, where it's just like, you didn't even take the time, because he said that the Gardner-Webb game wasn't even a sellout, and it was a sellout.
It was a sellout.
And that was one of the easiest things to find, because JMU Sports, at JMU Sports on Twitter, I posted it everywhere. It was a sellout. And brother, you missed that. It's just like, come on. I mean, they'll get there. Like the big boys and some of the group of 5 big boys, they're profitable. But at the end of the day, like, college sports as a whole is a net loser. So why are we focusing on something that it just doesn't matter?
Yeah. And we won the game, and we're
scoreboard.
Yeah. Scoreboard. And by the way, Chris, I actually went, after I read that article, I went back and read some of his other articles. Actually a pretty talented writer. He actually writes some pretty cool stuff. I actually enjoyed some of the things that I read on the Augusta Free Press. So check them out. But Chris, I got to say, man, what you talking about, Willis? All right. Now, Jack, it is time for us to take it to the house. And so the start of this season for the Dukes has been filled with coincidences. And whether you call them coinkydinks, godwinks, or as Webster's dictionary defines them, the occurrence of events that happen at the same time by accident, but seem to have some connection. You can't deny that starting the season against 3 straight North Carolina opponents is odd. Or the fact that 2 of our first 3 opponents had quarterbacks that started the season named Max. Coincidentally, both of them are currently injured. How about the fact that our week 1 opponent, Charlotte, played our week 4 opponent, UNC, in week 2, and played our week 2 opponent, Gardner-Webb, in week 3, and they play our old coaching staff and 13 of our old players this coming week when they travel to Indiana. It's also a pretty cool coincidence that UNC's defensive line coach, Ted Monachino, was the defensive line coach at JMU during my time with the Dukes. Coincidentally, the last time we played the Tar Heels in 2016, we also had a brand new coach, Mike Houston. UNC won that game 56-28, but we won a national championship that year. Perhaps the biggest coincidence regarding the UNC game for me personally came from a text message that I got this past week from the widow of one of my New York Giants teammates. She reached out randomly because coincidentally, her Instagram algorithm decided to feed her a viral video of me giving financial advice, of all things, for my day job. Her husband and my teammate was a guy named Quincy Monk, who played linebacker for the Giants with me in 2002 and 2003, and coincidentally played linebacker at the University of North Carolina. Quincy was one of the best human beings I'd ever met, a gentle giant in every sense, standing at 6'3", 250 pounds, with a smile even bigger than his ridiculous stature for a linebacker. He and I became fast friends, so much so that when the running backs had to do blitz pickup drills against the linebackers, Quincy would sort of brother-in-law it with me, right? every time he had to go against me, obviously knowing that at 5'6", 190 pounds, I didn't stand a chance against him. I remember being in the locker room before games, during our second season in 2003, when Jay-Z's Black Album came out. He and I loved the track Encore. And we loved it so much, we'd run around the locker room before games and we'd just be saying, Hova, Hova. We love that track. Coincidentally, Mac Brown is at UNC for a second stint. Let's call it a encore performance, if you will. One of the funniest things Quincy used to do in the locker room, especially after a big win, was this dance that we called the B2K, named after the R&B group popular during that time, of course. Coincidentally, the leading rusher for the Tar Heels is named Omarion. When Quincy died from cancer at 36 years old in 2015, exactly 1 month after I lost my dad, I was devastated. Quincy was a great man, a great friend, and I wish he could be here to talk smack about this game like we did before the 2011 game and the 2007 game. But I believe that he will be there in spirit, as evidenced by one more coincidence. The date of this game, 9/21. You see, September 21st, 9/21 is my birthday. But more coincidentally, if you take the 9 and put it together with the sum of 2 and 1, 3, you get 93. Quincy's number with the Giants. Now that just might be a God wink. All right, JMU Nation, we are in the house. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. We are so excited about what we have going on the To the House podcast. And make sure you follow us on Twitter at JMU To The House. Follow us on Instagram at JMU To The House. Jack, what am I missing?
That's about all of it. And JMU Sports News on YouTube for the full video versions of the episode. If you don't like listening to us, you can watch us too.
Yeah, watch me. I mean, I have a face for radio, but listen, go to YouTube, click that like and subscribe button, and share the podcast with other people. Let's go out on Saturday, my birthday. I'm going to be 46 years old.
Woo!
Let's go out.
Man,
I know, solidly Gen X. Let's go out, get a win. Go Dukes. Let's take it to the house.
To the House is part of the JMU Sports News Network. New episodes of To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce drop every Monday, and episodes of the JMU Sports News podcast drop in the middle of every week. Subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network wherever you find your podcast and never miss an episode. You can watch every episode of To the House on the JMU Sports News YouTube. Stay updated on social at JMU Sports News and at JMU To the House, and at our website, jmusportsnews.com.